Howdy, I'm Matt, and this is part 2 of a kind of like build series-ish. I'm just giving you the highlights on the WRA Spec Wing and also the Revenge. So I'll tell you what, we'll start with the Spec Wing because this has probably got the biggest tip so far. So we are actually looking at the bottom of this model and I've been and cut out the battery bay along the bottom and you'll notice that it's on a slight angle, and the reason why it's on a slight angle is because I need it wider at one end for the battery connector compared to the other. So right now we've done the paint. A little note is that there is a tip. Is what you can do is when you go to mask off your model, you put your masking tape, obviously a full piece all the way across, okay? And a tip I was always given was that you could spray that edge then with clear coat, and then any bleed through underneath the tape, which has always happened to me, wouldn't come through, or that wouldn't happen. Unfortunately, is that if you look really closely, is that there is bleed through, but ironically not as bad as what I've had on other models, but yet again it wasn't that effective. So anyway, she's got some paint, I've glued it together. I do have, and I will be using a Race Star 30 amp quad ESC that's wired up just there. You can see this beautifully in that light, brilliant. It's what you can see in there is that what I've been and done is get a hot, I used a soldering iron to begin with, and then I used a blowtorch and a piece of wire, and you'll notice that I've cut a big hole in there. That's so I can put a 3 amp back, hide that up in there, and then I've got a trench going all the way round, okay, and that's where the FPV stuff's going to go. Now I do need to dig that out a little bit further today so I can put a low noise filter in there, but that said, I'm trying to keep everything inside the envelope of the model. You'll also see I've been 3D printed in, believe it or not, just PLA, Runcam, spit me words out, mini, Runcam Swift Mini camera mount. I'll put a link to that in the video description, and big thumbs up to Aaron again for creating and sharing that design with us, because I've used it in other models and it's worked really, really well. And that's as far as I got. Oh, servos are in as well. The wires do run underneath the wing, and you'll see what I've done there with the receiver. So the receiver is in the middle of the model, and the antennas will come out over here at 90 degrees to each other. We've got the D28, 26, 2200 kV motor on the back. Again, tenner or so from Hobby King, readily available in probably all warehouses. And anyway, that tip at the bottom, what I need to do, because I'm going to be putting a 3S 2200 2200 pack. Sorry, I'm struggling with my words today. I've obviously not had enough coffee. Anyway, 2200 3S pack in the nose. The thing is that I cut out this bloody great big hole, and now we need to bang it back up again. And what I've been and done is that I've got just a piece of black core flute we found here in the toolbox, and you'll notice that I've been and cut all the way around it. Okay, now you may be wondering, well Matt, how do you know what shape to cut? Well, that's the easiest thing. What you do is get some masking tape, put the masking tape on the black core flute, and then you line it up underneath. Well, it would be that way round, and I drew in from the other side, so then I knew exactly what shape I needed to do. Cut around the edge, so there's the edges, and just lined it up to make sure it really was going to fit, and then got the craft knife and just cut around and skimmed the core flute round all the way around, and I'm left, let me zoom in so that you can see the piece which I'm left with. So I'm now left with a piece like that, and you'll notice it's got some carbon rod here. So let me turn this over and I'll show you what I'm going to be doing. So that now sits in there, he says. Make sure it sits in there nicely, fantastically well. Brilliant. So the pieces of carbon rod now provide stability to this bottom plate. Okay, so it gives back some of the rigidity which we lost by taking away the foam. Also with the carbon fibre rod, what I'm now going to be doing is putting cuts, or the foolproof way is to get yourself a bit of masking tape. So that needs to go there, like so. And we get another bit of masking tape for the other side. As you can tell, I get through a lot of masking tape here because it's a very cheap and very simple way of making sure that you get all the cuts and whatever thing is you're going to do, you're going to get it done right the first time, like cutting out servos, for example, because you can draw on it, and if you make a mistake, you can just rip it off and put a new piece on there. Trying to draw onto black foam really does not work out very well, I can assure you. Right, so that's sat in there very, very nicely, and now what I can do is underneath those rods, and that's the crucial point, I can now mark where I need them to, where I need to put the cuts in, so I can then sink these in to the foam. So there we go. So what I can now do, is get the craft knife, clean it up a touch, and then get the craft knife down in that cut, get it down far enough, the same for that one there as well, like so. Get that one across as far as I dare, up to the brace, and again in there, get cut in there, using the line as the reference. There we go, all the way out to the end, and that one there as well. Okay, so now I can go back and then I can start pushing these bits in and line them up like so, and I can push them down, and then that's how we get that piece of core flute flush with the bottom. Of course, what I will then go on to do is put some E6000 glue in those seams. I'll put some E6000 glue around these edges as well, and then just put a weight on it for an hour or so just for the glue sets. And of course, remember that bottom plate will also be laminated as well, so that we end up with a super strong base to it. And of course that then means that I can put some Velcro in the bottom to hold the battery in, and then the lid itself is going to be something really simple. I've not really worked out the design what I'm going to do just here yet, but it'll definitely be a lip which is held down there, and then a flap up and down, maybe a touch of Velcro, maybe something more permanent, or maybe a little bit more sturdy, but I'll try and keep the aerodynamics of the model itself. So that is the WRA Spec Wing. Remember, 30 quid. 30 quid, cheapest chips, you know. It's just any complaints which I may have with that model, I'm just gonna like remind myself I paid 30 quid. Right, the Revenge Wing has come on really well. Again, same kind of technique with the paint which I've used on there. I used a pinstripe to get the extra line in there. Again, these colours will really pop once we get some laminate in on top of this model. I don't really like this flap mechanism. I've had to build up the nose area with an extra piece of thicker plywood on the nose to get that right, and I've got a piece of foam just moulded in here at the moment which I'll cut off flush. The nose section is being glued on just at the moment. Again, I'm waiting for the glue to dry on that one. What I've decided, or what I'm doing, should I say, with the nose area right now, is that the run cam wires have just pointed out, but what I've done is I've cut that in. And if I can pull that out a moment, and you'll see what I've done, I've just gently cut out with the Stanley knife a little place for the run cam sparrow to fit in the nose, and the wires will then go, and I've got put a hot rod in there with the blowtorch and gone through and have melted through, so I can put the FPV gear inside the camera. That funny piece of plywood, I realised I saw in Richard's photo, that's where the run cam can sit on the top, although it's nice that they cut that design out, but reality is that I'm going to be used to stick a bit of Velcro on there, so it's going to get covered up. I'm not that much of a fan of this one-piece lid. I think it could have been done a little bit better, if I'm honest, but again, I'm not going to complain too much. It was 40 quid. Alright, a couple of little adaptations as we go along. It is kind of what it is. I did make a boo-boo with this motor mount, and you may notice the black bits of foam all over this desk. And the reason being is I was like wondering, where's this bit of foam for this back motor mount? So I carved up and made up my own bit of foam with some of the spare foam which was provided in the box. And then I found this lovely moulded piece of foam, which is really, if you listen to this, right, it's just normal EPP, that foam. Listen to this. Really, really dense EPP. So I made the executive decision this morning to get the knife out, and I sanded it all out, cleaned it all up, and I've put the proper piece in the back because that now adds a load of more extra rigidity back here on the motor mount itself, and I've glued the motor mount on. There should be 4 pins in there holding it, and then later this morning I will burn through a hole through there for the, well, number one, I'll burn a hole in the middle there so that maybe I'll put the big Cobra motor on there, for example, is that will allow the shaft to spin around in that hole, but also need a place for the wires to go as well. And I will be using the great big Turnigy 35-36 motor on there. Let's put that into proportion. It is a big motor. We'll be putting that one on the back. And one other point on this model is that it was all very straightforward to do. One point is that you don't see the servo wires going across the top. Pet hate of mine, I hate seeing servo wires cut into the tops of wings. The top should look as good as possible in my head, okay, and the bottom I don't really care about because I hardly ever see it. So down the bottom we've got the servo wires here coming into the middle, and then they poke out, and by the way, all I've done is just stuff all the parts for this model inside so I don't lose them, and then the servo wires are popping out here in the middle, and that does mean that I will need to use servo extensions. But on the flip side, I have now got the servos out as far as possible, and I've left myself a little bit of playroom in there as far as servo length. Now, the placement was really straightforward. Again, put a piece of tape on the wing, measured 4 inches back from the trailing edge, and made that straight line because you want your servo at 90 degrees to that surface, and you'll notice it's on a slight angle. So then I used again, I think I mentioned in the previous video, used the right angle triangle to work out where that went. Okay, and that's the progress really. This one is just waiting to dry for a little bit now. I've got a few minor bits to do on it, and then she's off for lamb. I will be putting, like, as far as the FPV gear goes, I think I will be putting the FPV transmitter up here, to be honest, or somewhere just here. It kind of feels like the right place to be, like, far away from the noisy bit, which is the ESC and the motor, and then I can have the receivers antennas going out either side of the wings. I think that will be a good place there. Again, really high airflow as well, which is good because this one is going to be really stonking it in the sky. So that's the 2 models so far. I'm going to label this up as part 2. Remember, if you have any questions or comments about these models, please just ask in the comments section underneath this video. And again, want to stress, these models were bought out of my own money for my own abuses. I'm not affiliated at all with Flying Wings. You can't argue with 30 quid and you can't argue with 40 quid. So that's part 2. Part 3. Let's hope it's the maidens. The weekend's coming up, the weather looks fantastic, can't wait to get some flying in. So from myself, Matt, as always, cheerios!